You are now tuned in to DameSmiff.
Check 1 2 1 2. What's good? This is DameSmiff with episode 2 of Musician Talks, and I'm here to talk to you today about how artists are affected by data and algorithms today, and what outcomes we can get from that looking forward as artists that'll benefit us. So I guess a good way to start is, what is data and its relationship to artistry? The way I would look at it is that data provides a lot of information for artists. And also, before I forget, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. I'll be here every day, 9 a.m., around 9 a.m. And be sure to follow on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and you'll find exclusive music and instrumentals, as well as ways you can reach out to me in background videos on either BandCamp or Patreon. You can subscribe to either one of those as well, and you'll find more artwork and things like that from me. But moving forward, data for artists, what that looks like is information. So, for example, if you've been putting out music for X amount of months or years, you're going to want to know how it's doing. And we talked about this in my previous episode about how an artist can understand their effect to society and their responsibility to show a reflection to the world versus making money, in a sense. But a tangible way to track that is to understand what data your product or your art is manifesting. So if you've been making music for X amount of months or years, and you want to look and see what is the top played song or your fans, favorite song, so the next time you have a show, you can highlight that song. Or you may want to know what cities your fans are residing in. It may not be where you are. It may be a whole nother location, and you might need to plan a way to go and, contact and get in touch with those people. And there's many other factors that you may want to know from your data that can help influence how you make your next decision. But where do you collect the data from as an artist? Well, independently, like I said in the last episode as well, you would have to affiliate yourself with somebody who specializes in collecting and translating data, because it doesn't make sense to have somebody just give you a spreadsheet with pie charts and things like that and you don't know how to read it. So it's always good to keep that in mind about learning new information, is how to digest that information properly. And with data, it can help you do that. It can help you do that simply by having more to pull from. You don't want to have so much data that you have useless stuff. Like, you don't need to know which of your fans wear t-shirts versus suits. Like, that doesn't help you. It can help you if you're looking for like a very specific thing, but in general, it's too specific to get basic general information about what's going on with your product. So another way that this can be beneficial to an artist is that it shows you what you need to work on. And oftentimes we won't know what we need to work on until we're looking right at the issue. And data, when you have enough of it, meaning you have enough time put into where you can see, where your dips, your ebbs and flows are as far as your progress, you can know what to work on, where to work on, and when to expect it the next time, which is called extrapolating the data, which means looking beyond what you have in front of you to predict what may come forward. So if holiday season is coming around, and for the past 3 or 4 years, when holiday season comes around, you notice a dip in sales, and data will tell you that because of your sales numbers going down. But how do you find out why they're going down? Well, you can look at different things like whether or not an artist is promoting correctly. There we go. Whether an artist is promoting correctly, or if the community that they're promoting to is digesting what you're promoting properly. So you could have a holiday album out and think, oh, it's holiday time, put one out. But if the community isn't digesting it, then it's not going to produce sales, which in turn brings your numbers down. And what this will tell you is that you need to do something. I don't know what specifically, depending on what the numbers show you, but you need to do something different. Oftentimes as artists, we don't tend to look at those issues as a math problem or as something that's numerical or something that can be predictable. We just assume the alignment isn't there or it just wasn't the time or things like that. But there are actually tangible things that can show you and help you change the results that you're getting as far as how your art is affecting your demographic to either meet sales or just your general goals, because your goals may not be sales at the moment. Like if you're a new artist, you may want to grow your fan base, so you may see this same data like, all right, and my sales are going down at holiday season, but I'm noticing that people are clicking, people are looking and maybe trying out my music, they may be listening to it, but they're not their conversion rate isn't there, meaning they're not actually paying to make a transaction with me, but they are listening to the music. So what you can do here, this is again hypothetical, but what you can do here is capitalize on the fact that people are clicking and use this to promote maybe another improved product or simply something different, to where you can offer these people something that they may be looking for or maybe they didn't know they were looking for. There's a lot of different ways you can handle that. And I want to talk about how artists can get into the habit of maintaining that relationship with data to where it's a good thing, but it can also be in what's the word I'm looking for? It can be kind of like an editorial thing where you as an artist can critique yourself and get a live critique and visual of what you are actually producing as an artist. And so the best way I can give you is kind of like weight loss or fitness is don't first go into data thinking my data has to look immaculate first, because as an artist you want to look, at least starting out as an artist, you want to look for issues, things you can work on first, because if you can work on those first, by the time you do run into that issue again, you'll either know what to expect or you'll already have a solution in order. And starting out, you don't want to see your numbers just shooting up as far as maybe plays or sales immediately and there's no hiccups. It's an amazing thing, but it's not reasonable or realistic, because what happens when all that stops? If you've been focusing on one aspect of your data, meaning like sales are going up, people are buying this thing, let's just keep doing this thing that's working. What happens when a change happens? Are you expecting a change? Can you afford a change in other instances? And you won't know that if you don't have enough data, meaning like a length of time where you've seen your sales go up and down for various reasons, to tell what's really going on, or what not what's really going on, but what to expect in the future as far as issues. Now, the way I personally approach that is I do either a weekly or bi-weekly or a monthly kind of audit of my data, to where I just do just a transparent pull up of my stats. I personally affiliate with BandCamp, link below. They offer you as much data as far as geography, plays, how long people are listening to your music, and they also allow people to name their price sometimes on certain products that you put out. Now that's helpful because you can figure out on kind of a grassroots level what's valuable to your fans. So if you put a project out for $5, but they're dropping 20s because they enjoy it that much, you can kind of see what your fans have a taste for and what they want from you and things like that. But moving forward, this is something that many artists will get benefit from, simply because their relationship with data is almost, I won't say parallel, but it's a reflection of your fans almost to the T. Like you can almost know the person more than they know themselves in a way. But you wouldn't know like their, personality, like their favorite color and shit. But you'll know that your fan base, like if you're a hip hop artist, you'll know that they like certain beats, they like certain projects, certain styles, or they like when you collaborate with certain people more than your solo stuff, or they might like the imagery on this album, meaning the album cover, more than this album and things like that. And you can find that out all through data. Now let me tell you what I see typically what happens with artists that are on the other spectrum of data, meaning they don't really see the value or benefit of data. Typically it's overwhelming for the first time because it's a lot to take in, to critique yourself for one, but it's a lot to take in as far as information, because many artists, when they do create, they tend to believe and kind of entitle themselves to believe that they are the source of what would be called quality, and that's not necessarily true, because you're you're in an industry where you're trying to sell something to someone else. So it doesn't matter what you think of your product. It matters what you're trying to convey to the community in front of you. And so with that, many artists are kind of hands-offish with their data. Like they don't really want to know this information, and they don't want to take the effort out of their, artistry to manipulate this data. And that's where you come into issues of maybe an artist's image may be tarnished, or an artist may not be seeing the streams that they would like to see, because there's maybe a disconnect somewhere as far as the artist and their fans communication, or maybe the artist and their fans, well, I'll just stick with communication and keep it broad, because that can cover promotion in general, just communication directly to your fans, like maybe getting on like live like I am here, or maybe even just telling people you're working on something. Like some people get surprise drops and fans miss the date, so you're looking at your data like, what's going on? Why aren't people clicking, day 1, 2, 3, or the week of the drop? And you can learn that from data, why they're not doing it. But for many artists, that's kind of bridge under the water. Once the project's dropped, it's like, once it's out, that's it. I don't really need to look into it. I'm done here. I've done my part, which is a fantastic relationship with your product to have if you're set up where to for that to be beneficial, meaning you're set up to where it's someone else's issue to worry about that data. But for many artists, that's not typically the case, and I wouldn't even suggest that for artists that are in that position. I would suggest for you to keep tabs on your data, even if it is in someone's hands. Like, keep tabs on who keeps tabs on the data. So, and another thing that I would notice too is sometimes it's just sheer procrastination or data. Like many artists will review their data so far behind that it's kind of like an issue that's kind of a staple now in your situation. A good example of that I can give you is if an artist has been putting out similar music for a long time, like a majority of their career. And in my last episode, I mentioned an artist may decide they want to step into a new genre of music or just a new sector of the music industry. When it comes to your fan base, if that's, part of your situation that maintains your income streams or your just notoriety, as far as your fan base, how would they receive that information of your new change, and how would they take the new change extrapolating beyond, the initial change itself? So what an artist typically will do is one or two things. They'll either piece by piece, baby step their fan base into the change. It's kind of like a gradual growth with the fan base. And with this process, I typically see more of a retention rate that way. That means people kind of grow with you, so they become a part of you, and they don't really need to go anywhere else, to get what they need from you. Or on the other hand, artists will just abruptly just do the change on their fan base, and what that can do, it can either be polarizing, meaning your fan base might either fuck with it or they won't fuck with it, or it can be just downright just destructive. Like, is it what you were before is different. Now it doesn't mean it's a good or bad thing, but it just means that what you were before is no longer the same thing, and everything you built before is now either shattered or it's not built on the same foundation, which eventually will shatter. And for artists, that can be career breaking, or it can be um, skyrocketing as far as stepping into a new arena in a sense. Like you've seen this with the artist Freddie Gibbs. It was kind of a slow baby step into just more and more successes, more and more collaborations, and better music. Whereas the people that have known him from his genesis, they continue, I would assume. I don't see the data, but I'm seeing more and more people grow with him that apparently have been listening to him. So, whereas on the other hand, you can get somebody like, let's find an example, like a realistic one. Let's say like a JayZ. Like a JayZ went from this kind of like hardcore 90s rap to just kind of out of the blue classiness, just out of nowhere. It was kind of shocking for people, but I think it was a bit of an elevation in terms of him intentionally wanting to kind of step into new arenas and things like that. It wasn't so much a growth for him, but more of a decision. So it happened more abruptly, and it happened kind of without the consultation of what will my fans think. I don't think that was ever a question. I think it was just, here's what I'm gonna be doing, guys, and he did it. And so that was kind of polarizing. Some people fucked with it, some people didn't. Now, why this is interesting to have this conversation is because moving forward in the music industry, we're going to be looking at technological advances that will dictate how we manipulate and move our products in the music industry. So if I have an album that's coming out next year that, as I spoke in the last episode, is affected by my human aspect, meaning I just want to try some new sounds, how would that affect my data going forward as far as an algorithm is related to that problem, if I'm asking that correctly? So if an artist today has a track record or has data of standing in a specific genre, let's use hip hop as an example, and subsequently they want a mental album, like there's an actual performing with, there's actually a rock band that they're performing with, how would that artist move forward in terms of looking at the data that they have and extrapolating that into a successful rock album for their fan base? Because again, I'm not going to assume that the average artist can come in to any new genre that they're stepping into and just acquire the fan base from before without some kind of like manufactured notoriety, meaning like you're just so popular that we don't come to you for music. You see what I'm saying? But so I think that's going to be an interesting way to see how artists manipulate this. From my experience, I'm noticing on the streaming sites, I use Tidal. On the streaming sites, I'm noticing a lot of artists, they're hitting a fine balance between quality and quantity and trying to appease kind of the appetite of a music streamer. Because I think the music streamer is kind of different from the music listener, and they're both different from the music buyer. I think we're looking at three different types of fans here. Whereas, and I'll try to identify them. Like the music buyer is a person that's kind of particular with what they listen to, but they're kind of either a collector of music, meaning I either collect certain genres or styles of music that pertain to just what it is. Like I collect jazz records or I collect the best rock records. And then you can have the other collector, whereas I just collect music from my life that stood out to me, and I just have basically a safe or a room of music that's affected my life, and I just keep that with you. And that to me are, in a basic sense, the people who represent the music buyer. Like they're willing and very particular about what they're putting their money towards. And then you have the music listener. I think I would fall under this category where they don't necessarily have a purchased collection of music, but they support their various artists in different ways. They're kind of involved in their artists that they like. And the music listener is an opinionated one in the sense that what they like, they like. They're not gonna necessarily listen to music that they don't like just because there's just music around them. They're kind of they're not as particular as the music purchaser or the music buyer, but they're particular about what they would call tasteful music or music in their taste. But they're not, stepping out of their way to go purchase to support this specific genre or things like that. This is more of a person that's kind of like, if it's hot, that's what I'm attracted to. Or if it's fresh or unique or things like that, that's what I'm attracted to. And that quickly, I forgot the third one. But essentially, how do you as an artist, this is just a rhetorical question, I'm gonna try to answer it, but how do you as an artist understand that relationship between your fans and their music and you and your music, and how you publish the music for your fans? And I think from the outside looking in, because I don't publish music that gets exploited to like thousands of people at a time, maybe hundreds, but not thousands. But from the outside looking in, I would think that that can be a bit of a hurdle to jump as far as understanding that you have to appease the algorithm as well as your fans. Like you would have to know so much about your fans to know to learn as much as to be able to learn as much as you can about the algorithm that you're working under. So I would assume different DSPs use different algorithms or maybe similar algorithms. I'm sure they're not all functioning under the same way. And excuse me, but I don't know much about algorithms themselves. I'm more of a non-techie person, more of an engineer and things like that. But as far as software and like coding and things like that, I don't know how that works. But what I do know is that there is a rhythm to it, in the sense that the consistency influences what the algorithm either will show to your fans or will either show to potential prospects or new fans. And so when you think about what a product is in this industry, that's our music itself. Like you can put out a single, you can put out an album, you can put out an EP, couple those with a video, or maybe a physical product as well. And then you'll have a bundle, which is still in term of product. When you think of these things, could you imagine you go into, let's say, Target, and Target covers many different departments as far as products. Like they're just kind of a housing building for different brands and their products. So to relate that to music, Target would be Warner Music, and inside of Warner, the building, you would have various record labels that all sell products, which are songs or albums and things like that. And similar to Target and their products, there's a person whose idea, meaning the creator or inventor of the product, is the person who allows the brand to exploit the product to the housing building, which would be Target or Warner, if you want to parallel it to music. So could you imagine going into a Target And just about every day, I wouldn't even say every day, every 8 hours, the entire store changes, to the sense that something new has come out. It's not vetted because Target, because it's a physical product, there's a huge process that they have to go in for you to even get behind those walls as a product. Because people make products every day, but they don't get into this building for until they meet certain stipulations and requirements. But imagine if you went into Target and every 8 hours, all the products were different, and the only requirement they needed to get in was that they had an affiliation with one of the brands that the housing building works with. That was it. There was no safety requirement. There was no quality requirement. There was no, well, I guess that the following things I was going to say, like functionality and things like that, would fall under quality. But there was no process to get these products behind the wall. What do you think would happen to the consumer, one, as far as what they think they would have as far as a choice in their shopping experience? Like, what would change in their shopping experience? And then two, what would happen for the person who is the inventor or the creator of a said product if every 8 hours it's a new thing coming out on the store? And damn, like, forget merchandising, like, damn merchandising and all that stuff. Like, we'll take all the human aspect out of it, because when we talk about music, a lot of it is sourced from that one particular intangible thing we call a song. So it's not like somebody has to go press and print music anymore and put it on a shelf, and then when it's time to purchase, go into that same room and pull that CD off and hand it to the person. Today's musical products are instantaneously consumed, and you don't necessarily even have to purchase that particular product to consume it. You can hear it just walking by, or you can jump on a streaming site's playlist and you can experience that product, i.e. consume it, and it's done, it's over with. That's called a stream, essentially. But basically, what does that do for your fans' shopping experience for music, and what does that do for you as an artist? Meaning, what does that mean for your demand as an artist, and what does that mean for your efficiency as an artist? Meaning, will you be able to meet the demands and provide quality music to do so? So yeah, that would be my two main questions for how the algorithm will affect an artist. So the way I would try to answer that is looking at today's artists, because we can't use long-standing artists with a lot of data from the previous decades, because their data will be outdated in the sense that fans are consuming music very differently. Where I personally feel that music at a certain point in the past, you had to be a music buyer to get your hands on the newest and latest. Whereas now, the newest and latest, you don't have to be a music buyer. You can be a music listener, and it will be at your doorstep, or in the palm of your hand, essentially, on your streaming sites or on your laptop, or maybe if you got Sirius satellite radio or something like that. Like, if you pay a subscription, we will put the newest shit in front of you. You don't have to think twice. And the way I've seen that affect artists that are today that are making a lot more music, or making bigger music, about like maybe A level, B level music, they're not putting out music in more quantity. They're affecting their algorithms, it would seem like, in a big swing type of way. So for example, I would say, looking at Kendrick Lamar, he doesn't put out a single every month, every quarter, or things like that. Now, behind the scenes, he may be supporting music and, doing various work, things like that. But as far as putting his name on something standalone, it's kind of rare to see. And I would assume it's because of the algorithms. I think the way people, not just solely the algorithm, but the way people consume music today is a lot more different, meaning it's fleeting. So if I were to put out an album I've worked 2 years on today, you would listen to that hour and a half. Let's say it's a long album. You listen to that hour and a half of music, and I'm, as an artist, banking on you to find a massive amount of replayability in that because that's where the money comes from. Whereas in previous years, you simply just making that purchase was enough. Like that covered enough because that purchase, one, was for that particular product, which I'll go into next. It's for that particular product. And then two, that purchase is finite, meaning I don't have to keep up with you as a fan to make sure that you're doing, like, to try to manipulate you into finding replayability, meaning I don't have to make music that I know you'll like. I have to make music that I know you'll want to listen to. And instead of making music that I know it's like for example, if I give you a taste of something versus giving you an entire serving of it, you will in turn want more. That's the assumption, is that you'll want more of it. So if I give you a 2-minute song that's amazing versus that same 2-minute song extrapolated into maybe 5 minutes, the odds of you coming back to that song are less and less because of how much time it takes for you to consume it and your attention span and all these things. And you can learn all these things and see all these things as an artist through data. Your data will show you this. It'll show you how long people are listening to music, where they skip, where they stop, and things like that. That's all things that you can learn from data. But why this is important to an artist, because artists typically find themselves in a predicament like, all right, I'm starting to grow in numbers, and you're starting to get feedback from your fans on what they do like and maybe not so much what they don't like, but you are starting to get a trend on what you can do to manipulate your numbers to grow. And so what you find yourself in is sometimes is, should I put out more music? Which in theory you would think, okay, if I have more and more music, like if I put out 3 days worth of music, meaning, yeah, 3 days worth of music, that's a lot of hours of music. You would have that much time to spend listening to my music as a fan, which would in turn make my replayability go up and my value go up. But oftentimes what you find happening is the average music listener, because they're not searching for music, it's being it's not even really being handed to them. It's just a wall to walk by because of streaming sites. That amount of music can become overwhelming for an for a fan. So they might look through that and then just kind of eat the meat and spit out the bones with your music and just take exactly what they like and make a playlist with other songs or other artists where they find exactly what they like. So that's where you find yourself. And sometimes as an artist, when you're thinking about algorithms, do I go for the big punches and just know that this is what you're getting from me as a fan, and that's the transaction? You're kind of keeping that traditional transaction relationship there, or go into this new relationship where I'm going to give you as much music as possible to where it's almost overwhelming, but you have so much to choose from that you would have to somewhere find value in it if you fuck with me as an artist. And for me personally, I kind of lean between, as an artist, finding a balance between the both. So I personally do this. I keep my albums rare, and then I'll do EPs, singles, and videos and other things like that a little more frequently. So that way my visibility, as far as the algorithm goes, is still consistent, so that the algorithm can keep me in motion. But at the same time, the quality of the music that I want to put out, meaning the albums, is still protected in respect to having a place for you to even see that, because some artists will just give that up completely. You'll see many artists where they'll have many projects, and they all either sound similar or they just, they deliver the same thing. It's what I call the cheeseburger of projects. Like, it just does what it's supposed to do. When you get a cheeseburger, you expect a cheeseburger, and when you bite into it, if it tastes like a cheeseburger, it's a cheeseburger. It's not amazing, it's not great, it's not bad either. It's just a thing. You're just doing the thing. And for me, that's cool. But then it goes back to my previous episode of talking about, like, well, then what benefit does that bring? You know, the what benefit does that bring the fan and or the artist? So if you're in a situation where your fans are buying everything you put out, you can do whatever you want. And I think that would be more in the sense of like a Tech Nine. I think a Tech Nine is in a situation where whatever he does, his fans are gonna at least click on it. They may, if they, even if they don't fuck with it, they're gonna click on it, put their money down for it to see if they don't fuck with it, and then tell him. Whereas I've seen other artists where they will put out music and it's more of a conversation about the artist than the music, which muddies up the product, and then they don't put out much music anymore because of that. They go into selling products to people versus putting out art. And I personally think that stems from this new relationship with technology in the music industry, because there's kind of an influence between the two. That was the whole thing with the ringtone era. When that happened, artists kind of stopped making songs. They just started making jingles and hits and commercials and things like that, in the hopes that you would go online on the DSPs and purchase a ringtone and use that ringtone, because you get, I think it was like you get paid for each sale of the ringtone. It wasn't necessarily if your phone rang like today where they're trying to do streams. I think it was just once you made the purchase of the ringtone, the artist and or the label would get kickback for that. Now, that's when artists, again, just trying to make a product, connect with people, decided that, let's take this, let's maximize this and make music for ringtones. Let's keep the ringtone in the back of our head when we're making our album. Keep the quotables and things like that for the hook, just in case they want to make that the ringtone. But just having that simple conversation in your studio kind of dictates where your art's going to go, because you're not going to think, all right, it's ringtone season, Fat Joe just dropped Lean Back, let's do an acoustic jazz version. Like, you're not thinking that. You're thinking, how can I top that? You know what I'm saying? You're not thinking I'm going to do my own thing and make ringtones out of that, because, again, as I said in my last episode, innovation doesn't make record sales, because you're not selling music to people. And what that comes up with oftentimes, well, what that has come up with in the hip hop industry is a relationship to data that's almost toxic, in the sense that artists are nervous about putting out music because of how the data will reflect and how the algorithm will treat their new or unique or artistic ideologies. And so the reason they're afraid of how the data will reflect, because you would have to make a change. And typically, if you're looking at an artist that's not in the mindset of changing, like the artists who I have seen try to change with the times, the processes that they have to go through are pretty difficult. Like, they're firing engineers and producers and finding and hiring new ones. They're changing their image. They're taking on new ventures as far as their lifestyle, not business wise, just lifestyle. And you would see this being reflected in their data. Like, you would drop a project and you would notice your fans maybe are flocking to it the first week, but the replayability is not there. So then you start to think, well, damn, okay, so what can I do differently to get the replayability up? And some artists fall to the side and say, no, that project didn't work. It was a flop. We're doing something totally different. I'm never trying nothing like that again. And that can kind of create this kind of scarcity mindset where you think, all right, I need to do something different to make this data look good to me, versus looking at it for what it is and saying to yourself, all right, the fans don't like this, but what good came out of this? And if you can tell that people are not promoting, if people are purchasing or promoting or purchasing or uh, listening to your project in mass in the first week or two of your drop, what that teaches you, along with other data, is that they are listening. So it's not a problem that people aren't listening to your music. And what that does tell you is that people do care if they are purchasing. That means that they're willing to put down money for your product. But what that also tells you is that you don't make music that they want to hear long enough for it to matter as far as, your streaming or whatever revenue you owe your label and things like that you're looking for. So then you're in a place where artistically, if you are an artist, that's where you start. Your power is in starting in, the issue and then working on how to solve that. But if you're not an artist, this can be kind of like hitting a wall for you. It can be like kind of jarring. Then what I've noticed, people who aren't as creative, what they'll do is they'll just go and looking for solutions, like one or two solutions. I'll give you an example. One example would be finding an artist who is meeting these data points and these high points in their data, and getting them on your product so that your product can kind of align with their fan base and data to kind of boost your numbers as well. It's a good relationship to have if you're in a situation that's healthy, but we've seen it done in unhealthy ways or in kind of transactional ways, that where the numbers do reflect well, the relationships don't. So the numbers are kind of like short-lived as far as doing better for the artist. Now, the other example, instead of going to get, somebody whose numbers are doing better, you can kind of just hire different pieces of the puzzle to make your situation better. And I've noticed people, they'll purchase or they'll hire maybe like the newest producer or the young cat who's got the most beats out or things like that. And that's and that's with the idea that this new sound will produce new data. That way we can just, like I said, some artists, they just say, scrap the old idea. We're not doing that again. That was a flop. Bong. Like, no, never. So they just go and try a whole new setup, which again, we have seen in a healthy relationship. I've seen that with Benny the Butcher and Hit Boy on his album. That was a really good collaboration. But again, their situation was different because they weren't looking at issues in their data. They just had a good relationship and they saw a good union there and were able to build up their data that way. But for some artists, that can be tough because you have to kind of step outside of yourself, meaning, again, you would have to change. You would look at that problem and say, all right, I'm not getting enough replay time. If I add another artist, that would add maybe 35, 45 more seconds to my fans listening to the music, if I get a good enough feature that they're attracted to. But when I get to that feature, what if I don't fuck with the dude? Or what if the relationship isn't mutual? What if they don't pull their end of the bargain? What if there's so many variables that you can think of? But for you to think that way would be, again, moving in a fear and scarcity mindset, instead of saying, I'm getting this person on here to be an addition to what I'm bringing to the table. You see what I'm saying? You're not looking for anybody else to come save your situation. But that would be you kind of, again, going out of yourself and then looking at the creative aspect of what you can do artistically to get people to listen to your music. But all of this, I say all of this just to put in perspective how data affects art today and how the tech industry and algorithms kind of affect how we develop and produce our music and products today. A new thing I want to kind of shed light on that I don't know too much about, But it is interesting, and I think it will kind of change how art will be produced moving forward. And I also think this will make the value of particularly music rise, and it's not going to rise exponentially because there's still kind of a politics to the music industry in terms of fans will love artists for who they are and not what they put out. So for example, if you're an artist who's putting out a lot of music that people love, they might love it for you, whereas if you turned into an asshole, they might not fuck with your music anymore. So keeping that in mind, this new thing I want to talk about called non-fungible tokens, they're kind of changing how people can view music. And I didn't see it in person. I kept hearing about it here and there, but the first one I saw in real time was one that Currency had put out. It was for an EP, and I'm thinking, okay, the way a non-fungible token works is you create your product and you can get it minted into a token, and that token is a one of one original piece, right? You can then take, I'm sorry for the smacking, you can then take that token, sell that to a possible fan or customer or whatever, investor, whoever, and they take their money, give you the money for whatever price that you set as an artist. Remember that, that's important because that can change in what I'm going to talk about later. But you set your price as an artist, they buy that token, and they take that token with them, and it continues to increase value. And because you've minted it, it's imprinted on your, I think they put it on a blockchain. This is where I don't know too much about NFTs, but it will always, that token that you have sold to this next person who has gone on will always be connected to the originator, meaning that the next sale that the person who currently has the token, the originator will get kickback for that. And this is groundbreaking in the sense that an artist who can mint independently can get royalties from their work without having to go through the middleman of paying a label, simply because artists are already creating without paying a label. Whereas before, to even have even the simple setup that most people have in their house, to have that at a time was like rare, extremely rare. So then we got to the point to where everybody has the setup and everybody's making music. Now we're at a point where everybody who's making music can now get kickback from it independently. That's what makes this groundbreaking. Now, the conversation I've looked into, and it's only been a few conversations, was that how would this affect music? Because people could immediately see this working for paintings and sculptures and other physical artworks. But when you think of things like music, movies, videos, or photographs, how does this work? Because even photography has gone digital. The best way that I can think of is this example that I've gotten from Currency, who, this was the first NFT I've seen physically where he dropped an EP and he set the price at $500. And I'm thinking, for what he's doing, that's kind of low. But then I started to look into the value that he was giving you. And it was like, you get the EP, you get I think a physical copy. There's like, you get a chain, like a gold chain out of a limited amount of chains that are out there. And I think some more merch, and as well as like a token to like have like a live meetup with him. And that adds tremendous value, where something like that, where you're getting a gold chain at maybe a concert, that would run you probably about $2,000 and a VIP access ticket. But with that being said, the idea behind minting an NFT is that you pay the 500, you get all these things, and then when the album or when the EP releases and the numbers start to go up in terms of value, the value of that token goes up. So those who partake in the purchase now, when it does release, they will have something that they have a value for themselves that is now increased in value for themselves if they want to release it. Like, I don't know if it'll work for the chains that they've made. I think those are NFT chains. But that would mean that if the album went from 500 and using certain formulas to increase the value as far as streaming and plays and record sales go, and the value goes from 500 to 2,500, the person who owns that token can sell that token at 2,500, and the originator will still get kickback from that newly set higher price, thus increasing the value. And again, that third person who has the token now, who bought it at 2,500, if that value continues to go up, he can sell it at an even higher price. And again, the originator will get a kickback from that. I'm not sure if the middle person gets anything. I think once you sell it, you're gone. But the person who minted it, I think they get the kickback for that. But again, I don't know too much about NFTs. It's just really interesting, groundbreaking as far as how we will consume art in the future. And I think you should look into it as an artist, because what this looks like to me is in the future, artists are going to be putting out very, very, very ridiculously priced albums. But what you'll see is the value going from what I predict is that you will see the value going from ridiculously priced albums to ridiculously priced albums that are low quality, that are packaged next to really high quality products. Because we're seeing that today, but you can't incentivize that in terms of like a kickback or royalty. Like, there's no back end to that. It's kind of like an upfront cost. So what can happen is and what can happen is many artists will come to the realization that I can make more money selling you the value of you getting a hoodie than you listening to my music, because when I look at the data in my music, the retention time is so low. So my value in this token that I'm making as far as an NFT would go comes in what I surround the music around. And I talked about this too in the last episode about how artists sell lifestyles versus music sometimes. And that's totally cool. But the problem that I think some artists will run into in the future is that, all right, if the quality isn't there for the music, and the idea behind the value going up is that the consumption rate goes up because of how it's valued, um, and you have a low retention rate, what are the odds of your value? What if, well, no, let me not say it that way. What are the odds of you maximizing the value of your artwork? So that's where I think artists are going to have to get really creative with their music and kind of get, this brings back the kind of innovative mindset to the industry where you don't have to sound like anybody else. And in a sense, you don't want to sound like anybody else because you want to bring unique and immense value to what your product is going forward. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, and how data and algorithms relate to artists in the music industry. Um, I'm kind of just doing like a stream of consciousness here. I don't really have a set format for my topics, but if you do have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll message them all. I'll comment on them all and try to answer them the best that I can. And two, if you know more about some topics than me, feel free to leave some information below and some links. I'll do some research and probably go over it in the next episode. So that's today with Musician Talks with DameSmiff. This is episode 2. And be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.